Hey guys, I hope everyone is doing well today. For this video, I just want to give a brief introduction on who I am for those who might be finding the channel for the first time on a video such as this. My name is Jake, and I'm a Pokemon card collector and investor. I've been doing it for about 4 years now, and I've been able to, on a social work salary, with a little bit of extra money from other types of investments, been able to grow a collection, a 7-figure Pokemon card collection, and also take money out of the hobby. So hopefully my experience and the aim of this channel is to, without telling people exactly like what cards to buy, which I try to avoid, is just talk with people about the ways that I invest, the ways that I collect and spend my money wisely, so that I make my money go as far as possible, both in terms of reaching my collecting goals, which is to have one of the biggest Pokemon card collections in the world, or as big of a collection as I can get, and also a valuable collection that I can sell off parts to fund other areas of my life and other ventures that I have into my life. So this video is going to be on Pokemon card investing and collecting, and how to make your money go the farthest, and to figure out and think about which type of investor, collector / flipper you are, and how you're trying to make money, and how you're trying to get your collection as big as possible. And I'm going to go through a little bit about my journey and how I sort of moved between these different categories and moved up in terms of what I was doing and the types of deals I was making and how I got there. So the 3 main ways I want to talk about in this video on how to make money are being a flipper reseller, which I'm going to define as buying any item and selling it within 1 year of when you buy the item. That's how we're going to define it for this video. Ideally, when you're a flipper and a reseller, you are trying to sell most of your inventory immediately or pretty quickly. And the concept or the idea of that is you're sort of buying below whatever market is, and you're trying to sell that card or booster box or whatever that you bought at or above market. And you're just sort of repeating that process over and over again until you build enough capital to either do bigger and bigger flips or move into one of these other categories. So second category I have here is what I would call short-term or medium investing. All right, and this is when we get into sort of collector, investor. You can really be both at the same time, because you can collect in items that are fairly investable and that they are good stores of value and have a good chance of going up over time, particularly if you hold them for a long time. Collectors out there can also be investors and both collect cards that they want and that they find value in, but also collect things that you think will make you money or increase in value in the future. So for this middle category, we're going to talk about 1 to 5 years. Okay, so short to medium term investing. And then the third category is going to be long-term investing, which I'm going to deem as 5 to 20 years. So with the idea that you're buying something and your plan is to hold it 5 to 20 years, unless you get some sort of outrageously high offer or really surprisingly high offer way over market, something like that. Or the market so fundamentally shifts so rapidly that you do decide to sell some of that item, which I think has happened this year to a number of people because of the huge growth in such a short period has shifted all of that. But okay, let's talk first about how to be a flipper, a reseller. If you want to start a Pokemon business, start getting product from a distributor. So I never went the route of buying booster boxes and getting a distributor and getting those booster boxes for like 80 to 78 to like 84 bucks, and then flipping them or selling them for 110, 120 pretty immediately. And then in this climate, depending on the booster box, you were getting them for like 84 and then flipping them or selling them for 200, 250 in the case of something like Vivid Voltage. Or you were taking that business and putting it online on like a YouTube channel and opening packs for people where those guys can make upwards of $1,000, $2,000 an hour, depending on how quickly they can open product and how much product they can source and get from their distributor. So that's a tremendous way to make money, particularly if you have that YouTube channel, that streaming channel, and you have a distributor. That's gotta be one of the best ways. It's probably the best way of being a flipper reseller right now. People are gonna have different feelings about the ethicalness of that and how much it's hurting the broader hobby. But just putting that aside, and I've talked plenty about that on this channel, but putting that aside, just as a way to make money quickly, that's probably as good as it gets right now. But the method that I took, which was a much better method before this year, and we're going to talk about why, was that I would buy up really large collections, not either that valuable or that gradable, and then I would grade the vast majority of them. And I was able to turn lots from $3,000 of worth, for example, to $30,000 of worth in the course of 4 months by doing that and just being really savvy with it. And that takes a lot of skill and experience and some just, I think, intellect, to be completely honest, and to be kind of savvy with numbers. But the best way to do that is to sit down. It's to look at and educate yourself. So look at lots and lots of graded cards so you can get a sense for what does a 10 look like, what does a 9 look like, what does an 8 look like. You can never expect any specific grade from PSA or CGC or BGS, but you can generally get good enough where you're gonna, if you send in enough, you're gonna be right overall on the grades. For example, if you send in 50 cards and you think most of them are 9s and 10s, most of them will very likely be 9s and 10s, even if you happen to think one is a 10 and it gets a 9, or you think one is a 9 and it gets a 10. And what I would do in doing that process is you want to be extremely conservative. So I would, and it's time consuming to sell these big lots. So what I would do is I would buy very big lots only if I felt like at that time, frankly, that I could like 5x my money when I got back from PSA, which seems like a crazy huge amount, but it was so easy to do back then because I think I was one of the only people doing it, honestly. Like 2-3 years ago, I know there were other guys doing it too, but there are just all the time great lots coming up from people who just, I think, had no comfort with grading, no experience with grading, no interest in grading, and also didn't see the upside of grading that I saw. You know, I saw a huge investment, really all the high graded cards, because for me, the values a few years ago were so low. So unfortunately, that information isn't so helpful to you guys now, but it can be helpful again. Because although we're in an extreme bull market right now, there are going to be periods where prices do correct, and they have started correcting on certain cards, and there's going to be opportunity again to probably do that when people get fearful. So I think understanding and learning those skills now and waiting for those opportunities when more of those types of lots may come on the market again is probably smart. It'll never be exactly like it was because so many of the gem mint and mint cards, of course, have already now been graded. But I think that there will be a cycling down period where there may be times again when that's quite a lucrative way of doing it. Now, that being said, even this year, that's still fairly lucrative, and I have done it a couple of times. It's just been far rarer and far more difficult to sustain some sort of like business or some sort of livelihood around that. So I think that you have to add on other types of flipping and reselling, whether it's going around and scalping, right? Which people, you know, hate, and I don't like the idea. I never went somewhere and bought out all the product there, but I understand why people are doing it financially because it's such good money. You know, but going around buying some product to flip, if you don't have that distribution channel, going to pre-ordering from places, new hot Pokemon products, knowing that they will go up quite a bit on the secondary market, and then selling those items. So those are all good options for the flipping game. Another really good option for flipping is going to be doing buyouts on ungraded cards and on singles. And a number of people are doing this now, and that's part of why we see such movement on waifus, on some evolutions cards, different sorts of things, is because a lot of people were individually trying to buy out that card to raise the price to, now these are not, you know, that's a very risky strategy. Of the three, that's the riskiest. The least risky right now, at least, is buying distributor product, getting that direct distributor product, opening up a channel, opening it on YouTube. It's a guaranteed huge money maker. Second, least risky is going to be trying to play that graded game, although there are going to be pluses and minuses in that, particularly with PSA closed right now, you have to go to CGC or BGS or some of these other grading companies where you're getting, you're not making quite the premium because it's much harder to get a 10 at CGC than PSA. Thus you're not gonna get generally the same premium by sending lots of cards to CGC, but you can still get some premium. And again, that goes to that education, that skill, that understanding the margin game. And then this I think is the riskiest, which is doing lots of buyouts on ungraded cards, going onto TCG Player, going onto eBay, going onto Facebook marketplaces and trying to buy out, all of a certain modern card or vintage card that's available, and then holding them for a little bit, or then once you've kind of raised the price yourself by buying a lot of them out, or raised the price with a few other people who are buying and manipulating that market up, then you start to slowly sell them. Can certainly work. That's been happening in the sports card community, in the Magic card community forever. You can make quite a lot of money doing that, and you can do it on really low end cards. Like you can buy up a ton of cards at like $2, $3, $4, and then push those cards up to $20. Then you're making $15 a card. If you had 100 of them, you can make $1,500. Now, it's a ton of work. There's a ton of shipping involved, and realistically, it's very risky because when you do something like that, you don't know how much supply is out there. And so as you're trying to buy it out or buy up that market, if there's a lot of supply waiting out there, a lot more can come on the market, which can push the price back down. And so those are the types of things you have to be really careful of, particularly with modern. But there are people who are very skilled, very savvy at this. I did this a little bit when I was first starting out and trying to build capital. And basically what it comes down to is knowing the prices like the back of your hand, and knowing and understanding what creates demand and what creates that hype and excitement, and being very engaged in the community to know what people like, and very engaged in the YouTube channels and other sorts of things. And then you can sort of predict, this card seems undervalued because it has really cool art. I feel like if I start buying up a lot of that card, people are going to notice, the prices are going to go up, the YouTubers are going to talk about it, and so on and so forth. It's going to move it, and maybe it is a pretty hard card to pull. There is some rarity on it, and so I don't think a ton more are going to come and replace the ones I'm buying up. Those are the types of things I would think about, but in doing that, I would really try and focus on cards that do have some rarity to them, so, secret rares and higher. In this sort of climate, in this sort of market, I think you're probably just as likely to make money in that as you are to lose money. So particularly after all the shipping fees and the eBay costs, and you really need to make an extra. You need to really get over like a 20%, depending on the value of the card, you need to get like 15 to 20% per card to like break even, and then that doesn't count all of the effort and time you're putting into it. So if you can really triple your money doing that, or quadruple your money, and you put $500, $600 in it, and that gets you $2,400 to move up and purchase something that's bigger and easier to flip and doesn't take as much effort or work, and you can get sort of bigger margins because there's bigger risk in terms of the money you're putting down, that's great. And I think that is one way to move up. It'd be easier, in my opinion, just to skip that step if you can, if you have the finances, and or just pulling that money from like a paycheck or work an extra job, as Rudy would say, right? For me, I did a little bit of that, but I was mostly able to skip that initial step because I had a salaried position in something else. And so I really went right into those more lucrative, where I was trying to make 60% margin on buying those ungraded cards, grading them, flipping them, breaking down lots. So the last thing to say, which I think is really important, is because grading is more difficult and the margins are tougher right now because PSA is closed, you can't even send to them right now outside of the $300 option, is that you can, instead of buying big lots and then selling and then grading some of them or grading the nicest cards, what you can do is you can buy big lots and then break them down and piece them out into better looking lots that are going to sell for more. So you can buy sort of large lots from people who are probably in a rush to dump their cards or get rid of their cards. Maybe they don't know exactly what they have. They don't want to take the time and effort to go through it, to learn all of that. And you can buy those lots at maybe 60% of their value, 30, even 40, 50% of their value at times, and then break them down, sell them on eBay. There are hundreds of people doing this right now in the Pokemon card market, and hundreds of thousands of people doing it across different collectible hobbies. And again, it really comes down to that hard work, being educated, understanding the risk, understanding liquidity versus illiquidity of items, trying to buy items that are very liquid. And so even if you don't make the largest profit, you can sell it right away, which gets you your money back, which gets you your profit quicker that you can then put into the next. How to do that stuff by going out there, by practicing it, by engaging it, by trying it. If you have enough capital to jump right into the short, medium-term investing. And I would suggest $10,000 to $20,000 to spend on Pokemon at least, given the prices. I think if I didn't have that, I might look at other hobbies, or do a little bit of that flipping to get defining flipping between flipping something right away in a year, buying some items that I think are currently being overlooked or are there's a little bit of fear or have retraced too far, maybe grabbing some of those items in the few $100, PSA slabs, $1,000 PSA slabs, waiting for them to go back up a little bit and sell them. Again, it's really day trading. It's really hard to predict that sort of thing. Even for someone like me who knows and is so engaged in the market, it's just so hard to predict what such a vast market is going to do. And it gets a little bit into that, like, you might be right like 55, 60% of the time, and that might be enough and that would be doing very, very good. And that would be enough to make you money if you're making smart, calculated purchases that have huge upside, where if you do hit the right one, you're making, double, triple your money, or at least 60, 70% on that, which can offset some of those losses or break-even type buys. And the only way you're going to know how you're doing is you really have to track it. You have to track your purchases. You have to track how much you're spending. You have to track how well your cards are doing. Don't tell yourself stories. Don't pretend that you're making more money than you actually are. Don't focus on just the wins and not the losses, like I'm sure a lot of people are doing right now. And that's all really important. Okay, so the next category I want to talk about is the short to medium term investing. This is the category where you're going to want to focus mostly on, you're going to start to care more about fundamentals of items and what makes something hold value over time, and less about what's hot. The first category, you don't care about what an item is going to be in 2 to 3 weeks or in 3 months. You don't care if the prices are stupid right now or irrational. All you care is, can I get that item for lower than the market value right now, and can I sell it quick enough that the market isn't going to implode? That's all you care about, right? When you move into this short to medium term investing, which is what we talk about mostly on this channel, and the longer term investing, that's when you care more about investing in fundamentals and moving away from hype and investing in things that are actually, not hyped at all and in fact are overlooked. And those are the types of cards and the types of items we talk mostly about on this channel. I think that in this area, the best thing you can do is you can have some sort of income from somewhere else. Either you're getting income from your flipper hustle Pokemon business, or you're getting income from your job, or dividends from something else, and you're setting up sort of a plan where you are going to be investing a certain amount a month, or a certain amount a year, or a certain amount a week, a certain amount a day, whatever it is, and trying to sort of stick to that plan, with the idea that you don't know exactly when is the best time to buy a Pokemon. but that as long as you believe in the long-term future of Pokemon as a collectible hobby, you believe that at least some items within the hobby are all going to be higher than they are now. In 5 years, 10 years, even if we go through a down period and there's a retrace and there are ups and downs, they're going to be higher. And I think that becomes even more particularly true when we talk about the long-term investing. The short to medium-term investing, you're starting to look at that, but you also need to be a little bit more concerned with macroeconomic effects and greed and fear cycles if you're looking to sell in a shorter time period, because bull runs and bear runs in collectible hobbies and any hobbies can easily last 3, 4, 5 years. And you don't want to be caught in a time frame when you need to sell because you didn't budget, or you need to take the money out for some other investment. Like, for example, you're putting this money in Pokemon now, but in 3 to 5 years, you're going to want to take it out to buy a house. Like that's the type of stuff that can be a bit riskier, because we could easily be in the middle of like a really bad general macroeconomic, economy, and collectibles might go way down in value, and it just might be a terrible time to sell, because if you wait another 3 years, it's probably going to recover and maybe be at all-time highs. So I think trying to pick items that you think, if you're in that sort of time frame, that you think are going to probably not get hit as hard by retraces, items that have really great fundamentals like rarity, right? And when we talk about fundamentals, we talk about supply and demand, okay? Things that affect supply and demand. So we're talking about rarity on the supply side. And on the demand side, we're talking about items that have always been popular, that have a longer established market in Pokemon, that aren't new kind of hyped hot things that people haven't liked for a long time. Because those items that people haven't liked for a long time, or they're not maybe as connected to their childhood, or there's more of a potential that people become uninterested in those items. So if we compare like modern rainbow rares, or modern, even like some of my favorite modern cards like Shining Legends Hollows or Hidden Fates, right? So two of the best, probably the two best, investable items, they still don't have a long history of being tested by the market. As compared to Vintage, which have been in people's lives for so long and have been wanted for a lot longer. I mean, even although the prices have only surged this year, there was still a market and interest in those cards the whole way, and now we sort of just have more of the people in the hobby who would be interested in those, and that's why the prices continue to go up, and I think we likely will over time, versus items that may get replaced by new items that nothing can replace these Wizards of the Coast hollows. Nothing can replace the hollows that you grew up with as a kid, that you collected as a kid, those first sets, that generation. And so, of course, there are good arguments for why Hidden Fates will be a generational set, why kids will want to collect it in 10 years, this or that. It just hasn't been tested as much, so there's a little bit more risk, particularly when you think in that 1 to 5 year range. So I hope that makes sense to people. I'm not saying those aren't investable items and they're not worth taking the risk. They're just a little bit more risky, and if you know you're going to need to sell something, you want to pick the item that is going to be the least at risk for that type of retrace in those moments, okay? And then when we talk about long-term investing, okay? Long-term investing, all that really matters is two things. You believe that the Pokemon card market is going to go up over time, and you believe that it's going to be a sustainable, established hobby. And yes, there are going to be cycles, and it's not going to be linear growth, because collectibles don't act just linearly. But that you believe that multiple generations of Pokemon enthusiasts are going to come in the hobby. You believe that those generations are going to like and be engaged in, for example, Wizards of the Coast, where you have multiple generations interested in Wizards of the Coast, similar to what we might see in comic books, where you have brand new collectors who are collecting and paying millions of dollars for comics that came out 20, 30 years before they were born, right? If we can think 30, 40, even 50 years into the future, if kids and people are still interested and engaged in Pokemon, some of these original vintage first ever appearance type cards, just like comic books. Now the comic books are quite a bit rarer, and that's another issue with Pokemon, but the demand side, if it follows something like that, you're going to have lots and lots of generations wanting those. And so the demand is going to be so high that likely, and continue to get higher, with those multiple generations coming in, that you see a path for those cards to do well, and it doesn't matter as much those peaks and valleys, which we're going to likely see. So when you're investing for that category, you want to think about what items are going to be historic, what items are going to stand the test of time, okay? And that is the area that I look to collect in, ideally. So I collect things, of course, that I love and that make me happy, but ideally I collect things that I love and that make me happy, and that also I think are going to stand the test of time and be loved by both myself and the vast majority of the hobby forever, as long as the hobby continues, because those are the items that do have the chance to be those $100,000, $200,000, $500,000, $1 million items someday. So when we break it down on like which one of these is going to make you the most money, and which one of these is going to help you succeed financially and or help you succeed in building the collection that you dream of and that you want, there's no one answer. I think doing all of these things can make a lot of sense and be useful. I think that they do require slightly different skills. Certainly the first one, the flipping, is the most labor intensive, and in a lot of ways the one where you really, really need to know on a daily, hourly basis, like what is happening in the exact cards you're looking to buy and sell and flip, and where you need that price memory, and you're just that machine of just churning it out, you know, buy and sell and sell and sell, and you're constantly going to the post office, right? You're constantly shipping things all the time. And you're working on that margin, on that you know, 10, 15, 20% constant daily grind margin. And you can make a huge amount of money doing that, right? But it's really a full-time job, right? I mean, easily can become a full-time job. Whereas when you do these medium or long-term investing, the money that you're putting into these cards can really start to work for you. And when you see huge boom periods like we've had this year, which is, you know, crazy, and I was hoping for something like this, in the sense that I was certainly buying all these cards 3-4 years ago, as many of these valuable cards as I could, you know, in high grades, because I felt like they were crazy underpriced, and I was expecting them more demand to come in the market and adults to come back and want to collect what they had as a kid, and I was expecting some of this collectible surge. I wasn't expecting it, right, to this extent. Any cards yet that are cards that I view would be difficult to get back, where the pop reports haven't changed this year, there's only been 1 10 or 2 10s added. Like, those cards I'm planning on holding for the 20, 30, 40 years. One, because I love them, two, because they're very difficult to get back, and 3, because I believe in them financially. Okay, so for me, what I would suggest is that you shift and work your way into that. Unless you want this to be your full-time job, you do the flipping stuff, you build some profit, you do some of those shorter medium-term investments of like solid good cards that are in the hundreds to $1,000 to $2,000, and then you eventually kind of get and cycle into those $2,000 to $5,000 to $10,000 to $20,000 cards that you're gonna hold for the long term, that you just need to let sit there, and you can enjoy them, and they'll go up. So I hope that doing that breakdown and that thought experiment is helpful for people. You want to constantly be mitigating risk, and you want to constantly be planning yourself so that you don't need to sell items if you're doing that short to medium term or that long term investing sooner than you want to, sooner than you believe that they've matured into and reached their full value. And in my mind, those cards won't reach their full value until 30 to 40 years from now, potentially. Maybe 30 years, maybe 20 to 30, when people, you know, are starting to retire in my age, potentially, and you have multiple generations wanting those items. Now, there's a lot of risk in that. There's absolutely zero guarantee that happens. I wouldn't be shocked at all if in 5 to 10 years the market sort of plateaus or it just or retraces and there isn't as much interest. I think that I'm betting against that. I don't think that's what's going to happen. I think that these items are special. I think card collectibles are special in having a moment, and I think it's going to sustain itself. But you have to understand that all investing is big risk. And when you do that type of stuff, it has a certain amount of risk to it. And the benefit of flipping is that although there's a lot of risk, if you're kind of putting too much, if you have too much inventory, if you're good at managing your inventory, where you're constantly selling and putting it back into inventory and selling and putting it back into inventory, and you get enough cash, you're cashing out so quickly that you're not at risk for those like longer term retraces or the whole hobby failing, because hopefully you're constantly taking money out of it and not just putting it back just into more and more inventory, which can put you at that bigger and bigger risk factor. So everyone is going to have their own level of risk tolerance. I think what's important is understanding the concepts in this video and understanding where the risks are, and tactically making those decisions, not based on emotion, but based on studying other collectible markets, based on studying non-collectible markets like the stock market, real estate market, to try and predict and have a better sense of how value and how demand gets built over time and how price goes up over time. Okay, so thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next one.